Hello everyone, my name is Stanley St. Bros, and today we're going to be talking about the prologue written by Bradstreet. Now, before I go into the summary and analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, the prologue by Bradstreet is a very interesting poem. In this poem, Bradstreet, it's a satire here. She's writing this poem. She's saying, she wants to be a poet. She's a poet, and she's not going to be writing about kings or settlements or colonies or major historical events. She says, I'm a woman. I can't do these types of things. I'm going to let the major writings, pretty much I'm going to leave that to men because men are more equipped to deal with these types of things. Now, we have to keep in mind here that Bradstreet is the first female poet, writer, publisher in America, that she was, dealing with a lot of struggles. Male poets were looking down upon her. They didn't think it was her place. Within this poem, she talks about, the rightful wielder of the pen, or the feathered pen, is the man, while the needle is the pen of the woman. So, kind of like this is a time of the time of life where women, they knitted clothes. This is not 1776. This is before America was even a country. This is when settlers are coming into the United States. People are coming into the United States to start the United States. This is the time that Bradstreet is writing in, and so the writers that existed, they were all men. Of course, you can understand that it was men that were going to school. It was men that were getting education at that time, and so Bradstreet comes on the scene, and she wants to write like men. She wants to write poetry. But pretty much the poetry that she's writing, it's not welcomed. It's not welcomed as the other types of poetry are welcomed, and how poetry is being written by men, and about what's happening in the colonies, about the different things that are taking place. She's not really a part of that, and that's what's kind of significant about what's happening with this poem. So Bradstreet is saying, I just want to write my verses. I just want to write, I want my poetry to be recognized. I want, other poets to acknowledge it. She's saying, I'm not threatening. I'm not going to take poetry away from men. I'm not going to take them away from their writings. She's saying all these things to say that, I just want people to consider my writing. She says, she says some things like, women are not good enough. Women are not great writers enough. Women are too weak. Their brains are not as sophisticated with the male brain. And all of this is kind of like very funny and very satirical, because the poem is very, very complex, very well written. It's great poetry. And so the poem itself kind of like says that, yes, although this woman is saying this about her skills and her mind and what she can do as a woman and her weakness as a woman, the poem is showing that she does not have any weaknesses, that she can write, that she can be a great poet, just like the men in her time, just like her contemporaries. And so, she gives us a bunch of excerpts or a bunch of examples to show us that, she's a great writer. She mentions the muses, which at the time when she was writing this poem, the muses were very, they were in fashion and poetry. And so Bradstreet here, she's saying she just needs recognition, she needs acknowledgement. She says she's not going to write about kings or colonies or settlements or things like that. She's not going to get into the way of male poets. But of course, she takes her mark in history, and she writes some great poems that people still read to this day. Some personal poems, some poems about life, about reality, about our place in the universe, existentialism. Because her poems, they're not just about daily life. They're also about life and death and what our lives mean. And so her poems pretty much kind of like they have a special place for them in the realm of American poets. So that is quite fascinating with the work of Bradstreet here. And so this prologue, the prologue by Anne Bradstreet, it's pretty much a judgment of the culture that she was in, the struggles of being a woman, the first woman to publish poetry in that culture, the struggles that she faced, and how men didn't think that she could, you know, that she could write poetry as good as them or be allowed to write poetry as them. She gives us a lot of examples of how, you know, at the time it was expected for women to sew, to take care of kids, to take care of the house. Now, she doesn't have a problem with this. This is not a feminist ideal or you know, this is a Puritan woman who believes in God. She had 8 children. She took care of her family. She loved her home and her husband. She loved her husband to pieces. It's just that she's saying that, yes, all these things are true. I love being a woman, all these things. But that doesn't, you know, hold me back from also being a great writer and a great poet. And that I should be allowed to also exercise my work in poetry, my work in writing. And so, you know, this poem kind of like challenges the norm of the time, and how, you know, to prove, yes, she does say, yeah, I'll leave all the important stuff to men, but also kind of proves that, you know, she's saying that women need their own place, that women can write, that women can go toe to toe with men, not replacing them, but being their contemporaries. That's what she's saying here, that she wants to be a contemporary, that she wants to write, that she wants to be a part of the discourse. She wants to be a part of the arena, the intellectual arena, the poetry arena, that there's more room to expand and grow. And of course, she's right about that, because in poetry, yes, we should get the perspective of different peoples, different cultures, different races, different tribes, however you want to say it, because poetry is different, and to see the world through a person's eyes, especially the female eye, gives us a different perspective on how the world looks to different people. So here in this poem by Anne Bradstreet, the prologue, she kind of like gives us her grievances, her objections to women writing and being poets, and how she's saying that, you know, that she deserves to be a writer, that she deserves to be a poet. And she gives us a great poem, and using a lot of devices and literary devices to get her point across. And I think that she gets her point across quite beautifully in this poem. So in terms of analysis and deeper meaning, that's what this poem is about. It does challenge the norms. It does point out the norms. It is this satirical poem that says, you know, I'm weak, but she's really not weak. She can write good poetry, and also kind of like saying the plight of women in the time period that she was in, but not to take into account, not to go as further as to say that she's like an early feminist, protesting equality and things like that. No, that's not what she's saying here. She's just saying, I'm a woman, I can write, I can be a poet. You know, these struggles, these difficulties in this time period, they shouldn't be here. There should be enough space for men and women to write poetry and to thrive. So I think that this poem is very significant and special because of that. So that's my analysis. That's my summary of this work of the prologue by Anne Bradstreet. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow.